Vi ska få höra någonting om digital transformation in the cultural heritage sector. By using the digital technologies, we can expand our reach, invite new audiences, and connect to the world like never before. But how do we do this in a successful way? We will now get some inspiration from our next keynote, who has been in the museum technology arena for nearly 20 years. Please welcome the Director of Media and Technology at the Minneapolis Institute of Art, Mr. Douglas Hegley.
So I'm here this morning to talk to you about digital transformation. And digital transformation is here. You can ignore it, the table will break, but I'm here to talk about it, and I'm not here to talk about it in this way, okay? I don't believe in the whole predator-prey concept. I'm not here to scare anyone, and I've been working in the museum sector for 20 years in technology that has always seemed to be very scary to museum folks, right? Technology is really not scary. You know what my favorite technology is? A spoon, right? Never requires an upgrade, it's very effective, and try eating soup without it. My background is not technology, my background is not museums, my background is psychology. So later on when we chat, if I ask you anything about your mother, you should probably not say a word, okay? I do believe, though, that technology and people go together in really interesting ways. And I'm a firm believer in people. People and change is really what psychology is all about, and it's what digital transformation is about too. Now I have an antivirus warning. Everything's going well today. Why is it when at a conference with museums and technology, the technology always fails? Yeah, I got it. I work at MIA, the Minneapolis Institute of Art. If you haven't been, come visit. I'll take you behind the scenes and show you all the secrets. MIA has about 90,000 art objects. The Fine Art Museum is 101 years old. For the past, we have 260 staff. For the last 4 years, we've been averaging about 720,000 visitors a year. Minneapolis is not really a tourist city, partly because the weather is just like here. People in America call it flyover country. But it is a terrific museum. It was founded by folks who made a lot of money in the flower and train and transportation and banking industries. So it's a terrific collection, arguably the best collection of Asian art in North America. Before that, I worked for 14 years at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, which has been in the news lately, probably for all the wrong reasons, right? I can't talk about any of that. What I can say is when I started there in 1997, the words digital transformation had never been heard before and weren't invented for a while, but that's exactly what I was doing, working with a huge institution, almost 3,000 staff, 6 million visitors a year, trying to patiently, gently, with empathy, move the institution from analog to digital. And that included everything from desktop computers to digital photography to digital videography to creating entire new departments. If we go back even before that, I was a pediatric researcher. I worked on a project called NISTAB, where we looked at emotional attachment between caregivers and babies, primarily comparing so-called normal populations with those with severe handicaps. Fascinating work. So you now know two things about me. One, my path from there to today is not straight, right? I've taken many turns in my career, and I'm older than I look. People. I love people. I'm an advocate for people. People in all of their wondrous glory and all of their sort of variety and potential. And today, what I'm going to try to do is weave a narrative for you, going through these points, about people and technology and the concept of digital transformation, how that comes together to actually create terrific success in our sector, despite the challenges that are there. I will apologize to you ahead of time. I get really worked up about this topic, which means I'll start talking really fast and get really excited. If there's a point where you can't understand a word I'm saying, just someone start waving their arms and tell me to calm down, okay? I've only had a little coffee this morning. I think I'll be all right. I will share all of these slides on slideshare.net. Some of them are very dense, and I don't have time to go through what they mean entirely, but you can get back to them and unpack them. So, 2 words, digital transformation. Simple. Maybe, right? We can try to look at this in a way. Now, this kind of language seems familiar to me. It's dense, it sounds smart, but by the time I finish reading it, I'm more confused than when I started. Where have I seen that before? Oh yeah, museum labels, right? So I think if we could just calm down a little bit and not worry about the fancy language and unpack this, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about change. Change that's driven in part by the potential of digital, which is going to change what we do, how we do it, what we know, what we learn, what we need to learn. There are tremendous opportunities, you heard about some of them yesterday, I'm sure you hear about more of them today, to leverage current technologies to engage audiences. And when we do digital transformation well, we can anticipate the future. But technology is not magic, and the secret here is it's actually not about technology. And it never has been. I'm not a technologist, I'm not an engineer. I can't write a program, I can't install a server. I have trouble unjamming a printer, right? But what I can do is communicate. What I can do is work with people. What I can do is see the potential of technology to be engaging and to work for them. Don't expect technology to fix a problem. If you have a problem and throw technology at it, now you have a problem with technology on it. It doesn't really work. But if you don't understand the technology, it seems magical. And I think if I look back at the arc of my career, part of the reason I've been successful is that I can explain and demystify technology to people who think it's magic. Right? That can be very, very powerful and very effective. So, does it matter? Why do digital transformation? Well, technology has accelerated, right? It wasn't that long ago when we were still making tools out of rocks and counting on our fingers, right? 90% of human history was that. And recently we've gone from the abacus to robots, right? In just the last, not even the last century. It's a little bit terrifying, but it presents tremendous opportunities, right? Probably you've seen this before. Internet use continues to increase, even in developing countries. What's fascinating to me is that developing countries have almost the same angle of use year over year as developed countries. Kind of interesting. What that's done is people now have an expectation, right? They believe that they should always have a connection, because that connection gives them information on demand, exactly what they want when they want it. It also connects them to each other, to other people, to what's happening in the world. And if it's not digital, it's losing relevance, right? Especially to a group of folks who've grown up always with this technology available. Our competition is tough. They're good. And our competition is not us, right? Don't compete with other museums. Don't envy your sister museums. Think of it this way. To the general public, museums are franchises of a single corporation, right? We're all McDonald's. If they come to my museum and they have a terrible experience, do you think they wake up the next morning and say, let's try a different museum because it'll be totally different than that one, right? Our competition is big entertainment with billions of dollars available to spend on marketing and engagement and all the other kinds of things. It's professional sports, it's shopping, it's the couch at home with streaming services. That's really tough competition. To get in that game and compete for people's leisure time is our challenge. We also have to stop believing in the myths that you hear about digital transformation, right? These kinds of myths. It really only matters for Apple and Nike. It doesn't matter for our sector. We can wait. We can wait a while and see if digital is really going to stick around, right? Or we hired a millennial. She'll take care of it. It'll be fine. The truth is there's tremendous opportunity no matter where you are. And across all industries and all sectors, people who lead with digital are actually succeeding at a rate that's higher than any other. And you cannot achieve transformation simply by collecting some projects or pushing a lot of work at your millennial. That's not transformation, that's just stress. But why museums? Why would this matter to museums? I think in order for me to begin to answer that question, I want to talk about what is a museum. Now, yesterday afternoon, Ashkan had some interesting answers to what is a museum, and they were great once I got them translated. Maybe my answer is a little bit different because I'm an insider. I'm a museum guy, and I've been in the museum sector for a long time. I think it kind of boils down to something pretty straightforward. All of us have these mission statements. This is ours at MIA. It's pretty good. It's pretty straightforward. It really means we have some stuff. We keep it safe. We study it. We learn about it. And then we share that with people. And the key element there is the sharing with people. If you don't share with people, you have a warehouse. Anybody here want to work in a warehouse? Right, even if the stuff is cool, it's all in boxes, it doesn't matter, right? What you really want is to share it with people and see them light up. We have this responsibility. We have the world's treasures in our possession. We have the greatest, most amazing things that mankind has ever created. And it's our responsibility to hang on to them forever, if possible. And there's some challenges there with contemporary art. They use some interesting materials. And then we want to deliver wonder. What does that mean, right? I think museums have the potential to be cathedrals. Cathedrals of awesome, okay? But what do I mean by that? You've all had this experience. You're walking through a museum and you see something and your heart skips a beat. Time slows down. Flesh is tingling. Your mouth is hanging open. You want to tell anybody, even a stranger next to you, look what they did. Look, how did they make that? And those moments are exceedingly important, right? Because they deliver this experience of awe. Let me put on my psychologist hat for a moment here. There's a lot of recent research into this concept of awe and wonder. A couple of things really cool about it. One, it's a moment in human experience when your cognition, your rational thinking side is perfectly connected to your emotional side. So it's the experience of wonder is both thinking and feeling at the same time integrated. And that's relatively rare in the human experience. Secondly, that experience can actually change you. It can make you a better person. Now, I was a therapist 25 years ago. It's hard to make someone a better person, right? People come into therapy, they're motivated, they want to be different. It's still difficult. But if they experience awe, there's a shift in the way they feel about themselves and the world. They're more generous, they're more caring, they're more giving, they're more connected to other people. We deliver this. This has incredible value. Digital fits in here because digital, look, I understand, digital has a dark potential. It can isolate people. It can create situations where bullying is rampant. That's bad. But I believe, and I've seen digital also create situations of delight and wonder and connection and laughter and emotion and the capacity for people to dive in deep, to really pursue what they're interested in. And I've seen it work. And I'm going to describe to you how we measure that a little bit later. Where we get to is audience engagement. And with audience engagement, we have the potential to turn the paradigm for our institutions around from us being experts who are lecturing people to really being connected and being a visitor-centered museum. It's a brand new book out from my friend and colleague, Peter Samus, and his colleague, Mimi Michelson, where he talks a little bit, they both talk, about case studies of museums, primarily in the US, where they have really flipped the model and talk about being very visitor-centric and that is driving change and innovation in those museums and informing them in all of the decisions that they make along the way. Just a few days ago, I was in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a little jet-lagged, but I was in Cleveland, Ohio at the closing plenary where Peter was actually talking about his book and some of the research they did. And he made this statement, which is really interesting. Too often, museums use technology to sidestep bigger issues that they're not prepared to face. And he listed some of those issues, things like engagement, things like the making of meaning, the question of whether or not visitors should care about what you are displaying in that museum. If these questions are unanswered, and you paste technology onto the experience, then you still have the same unanswered questions with technology pasted on, right? You got to get to what you're trying to accomplish before you worry about the technology. Without clear goals, without really knowing where you're going, you'll wander around aimlessly. So please, I've kind of mentioned this before, don't try to compete. Don't try to be leading edge. Don't sit in a meeting and say, we're going to be the greatest technological museum in the world. It's not really the goal, right? That's not really, who will that impress? Some of your peers? A corporate funder? Maybe. It's not going to impress your audience. Start with the audience. Start with what they're looking for. You know, one of the questions we have right now in the wider field of technology is this question of apps. There are too many, right? It was cool for a while. I could download them, and they're free, and they're mine. And now I have 600 of them, and they keep updating, and I can't find the ones I need, and I forgot the password. Is this really the future? I don't know. So if you as museums go out and pursue app building, I predict failure. So what you're trying to build with digital transformation is a foundation. You're really trying to think about the skills, the people that you need, the kind of professional practice of putting all of this together, generally by hiring smart people who know about it, and not just pursuing shiny toys. Now I know shiny toys are exciting, and I'm not going to disrespect museums that have shiny toys. Shiny toys are cool. I wish I had more of them. But yesterday afternoon, the Dior VR mask, that was great. I got to steal that slide from Ashka. That was fabulous, because it's better than this slide. But I can't tell you how many times some excited salesperson gets me in a corner and shows me their new VR thing. That just sort of makes me dizzy and nauseated when I look at it. And I just don't see this as effectively creating the environment in which we can succeed with our digital efforts, because the content is so difficult to make. So in this case, I think for us, it is time to wait. But if you have a terrific VR project, I'm not disrespecting you. Way to go. Teach me how to do it. I think it's more important to be a storyteller. This is a cute little figure from our collection. It's only about this big, Native American. Storytelling, obviously, key in the Native societies. But when human beings engage with stories, it changes your neurochemistry. We're wired for this stuff. When someone tells you a story, it engages your emotions, it engages your cognition, it engages your memory. Your brain functioning actually increases. You get smarter listening to stories or telling stories. And stories have this amazing way of connecting us from the present to the past. What does that sound like? Sounds a little bit like museums, doesn't it? So tell great stories. By the way, digital's really good at storytelling. People are good at storytelling too, right? You probably have a volunteer or a docent or a tour guide in your museum who's an all-star. They tell great stories. They can adjust the story to the audience. The group they have has questions that they didn't anticipate, but they can pivot and they can change the way they're talking. The great thing about digital is you can create this layered experience. You can allow people to guide themselves through the story that they're trying to investigate and get to the information that they're looking for in the narrative they need. The concept of hyperlinking is what we do naturally as human beings. We can jump from one topic to another based on our associations. It's been pretty cool in the internet revolution to see that expressed in code. The other cool thing about digital stories is you don't send them off to a printer for 20,000 copies, right? It can evolve, it can change. You can change it right now if you need to. Because most of our visitors do not, especially the new target audiences that we're driving toward, do not come to us with deep prior knowledge. The analogy that I've used here in this case is to look at a resort. Okay, most people come to the resort just to have a drink and stick their toes in the water. Some people come to go scuba diving. That's great. But you don't see the people who work at a resort disrespecting folks on the beach having a drink and only paying attention to the scuba divers, because they would go out of business very quickly. I think, particularly in my sector, art museums, there's been a long history of playing only to the expert niche and forgetting about all these other audiences. By presenting only expert information with expert language, it's very hard to engage audiences who are just dipping their toe in the water to see what it's like. So what you do with digital in particular is you have this capacity for layering the content. So you start with some context. Where are we? What's going on here? Why are these objects together in this room? Then you layer in some narrative, storylines with characters, right? With conflicts and resolutions, with mystery. You build in those stories, all of it based on this foundation of expertise. The most terrific thing about museums, the public trust us. Right? They trust us more than universities. This is research from the UK, but I think it applies mostly across Western society. So they trust us more than higher education. We're trusted more than the police. We're trusted more than politicians. Can you believe that? People trust us. The reason they trust us is that foundation of all the work that we do. Deep, rich facts, scholarly research. We must have that. One thing I think that people worry about with digital is we want that to go away. We just want Facebook. That's not true. Facebook is just a tool. It's just a thing. If you're posting on Facebook, it's not based in fact, you'll lose your audience. Right? You need that research. It's very important. And please don't ever talk to me about dumbing down. I hate that phrase, right? The analogy there I say is, look, do you take someone who's 5 years old and teach them astronomical physics? That doesn't make it dumb. You're not dumbing it down. Do you talk to them about stars and planets and the wonders of the universe? Of course you do. Because they get inspired and curious and excited about it, and they want the thing orbiting their light, right, in the bedroom, and they love it. So it's not dumbing it down, it's introducing, it's opening the door, it's welcoming in people who don't have a lot of prior knowledge. Same concept with our audiences. When you tell stories, when you share stories, when you let people guide themselves through stories, you get this level of engagement and communication, and you can see it all the time. Digital is just one way of doing this. It happens to be the way that I'm usually responsible for in the museum, but that doesn't mean I disrespect non-digital ways of doing this. In fact, often in our museum, you'll see people engage with something electronic and then turn and walk over to a docent or a volunteer and ask them some questions and move seamlessly back and forth between screens and people, because that's what we naturally do in this day and age. There's no reason to be afraid of it. I would guess in my 20-year career, I've been asked at least 5,000 times, Douglas, isn't digital going to ruin the experience? Won't it take away from people looking at art? Won't they just look at screens? I said, well, no. And the research that we have to prove it is summarized on this slide. So when we at MIA produce these digital stories, and we use a platform called Art Stories that we built. It's open source and free, and any of your museums could be using it by tomorrow. I will admit you need a little technical expertise. So I'm looking for some money to actually package it up and make it easier to install. But that'll come. Give me another year. We share these stories. We have iPads in the galleries, about 40 of them that share over 100 stories about the works of art. You can also pull it up on your phone. You can pull it up right now if you're on the internet. It's artstories.artsmia.org. You can explore this and play with it as you wish. In the museum, when we share this, we hire independent third-party evaluators who come in to see what happens. Here's what happens. People use it, okay? They walk by, they see it, they use it. Not everybody, but they use it. They use it together. They talk to one another. They say, hey, look at this. They say, oh, wow, look, this goes with this. I didn't understand how that worked. They spend more time in the museum and visit more galleries than the folks who didn't use the technology. Even when you subtract the time that they were using the technology, they see more works of art. 6 weeks later on follow-up, they remember the stories. They remember the content. Then the evaluator asks them about the technology, and they had no clue, right? To me, this is a victory. Because my goal isn't to get the audiences to go home and say, that museum had really cool technology, right? I want them to go home and say, there was a Rembrandt. It was about this tragic story of Lucretia, who committed suicide because her honor had been violated. That's what's moving. That's the stuff that excites people and engages them. It's a false dichotomy to pit digital against mission. Digital is in the service of mission. You might as well pitch your facilities against mission or your finance department against mission. All of these things serve the mission. If they're not serving the mission, you've got misalignment and you have a problem with your entire strategic array, right? Digital serves the mission, always serves the mission, enhances experience, open doors. Digital is a horizontal. Now, you may need a department for technology or digital, and may need one of each, depending on the size of your organization. But the truth is, folks who work in digital media, in technology, and IT service everybody. Tools permeate every sense of the operation. And when you silo technology into a department and don't think of it as being a part of every department, you start to lose the potential for real growth in that way. Think of it this way. If you're putting a new addition on your building, and these photos are from Cleveland Museum of Art, where I was just last week. They have this amazing atrium that they built between two of their buildings. It's really astounding when you see it. It was a major building project. But the idea here is that you don't tear everything down, right? There's beautiful buildings already full of wonderful objects. They were just adding to the experience. Digital adds to the experience. It's additive. Does it require some reinforcement of the foundation of the existing walls? Absolutely. Does it require you to kind of think a little bit about who your audience is and what you want to deliver to them and what kind of experiences, what's the truth, et cetera, et cetera? Of course, it helps you re-examine those things, but ultimately, it's additive, not destructive. There are risks, right? There's always risks. Darn, I hate risks. There's risks of doing it. There's risk of moving ahead. Here's some of them. If you move ahead without any kind of strategy or vision, you'll spend a lot of money. You'll get nowhere. I promise you. If you don't really have, we're going to talk about digital literacy in a few minutes, but if you don't have, there's a gap in the knowledge, you're kind of in trouble there too. Don't invest the time, the energy, the resources. It's going to go off the rails. And then the last bit there, if you put all the work on some underempowered and overworked staff, good luck. They'll quit and go to the private sector. There are some risks of not moving forward, right? The idea is you can ultimately become irrelevant, and none of us want to be irrelevant, right? If you have no strong foundation, if you're sort of chasing apps and shiny objects, there's this, right, you can pay me now, you can pay me more later. If you don't sort of sit and really think about the strategy and build the foundation, you'll be in trouble financially and in terms of staff. So, hopefully at this point, I've been somewhat convincing that this is important stuff to do. I think the biggest question is how to, right? So I'm going to focus on 8 key areas that I think are really vital for you to be successful in digital transformation. Some of this comes from my own experience over the past 20 years. Some of it comes from this terrific paper written by COGAP that I highly recommend. Lately, I've been having trouble finding it online. I don't know what happened. Maybe their link or their website got screwy. If you just email them, they'll send it to you. They're terrific guys in England. And again, my slides will be up on SlideShare, so you can get back to this if you need the reference. Number 1 is readiness. You need to investigate whether or not you're ready, or how ready you are, or you're ready in what kind of way, right? So the answer is, well, it depends, right? Because isn't that always the answer? Anyone here have kids? They ask you a question, you're like, well, it depends. It's not the best answer, but it's true. One way to think about it is to try to use a rubric where you can evaluate the maturity of your organization when it comes to digital. An honest look in the mirror. It's not meant to be a value judgment. It's just, where are you right now? So Forrester Research in the US has developed this 2x2 matrix where the elements are the digital customer experience, which can be great or not so much, and digital operational excellence, like how does it actually function and work. We fill this in a little bit, and I'm slightly uncomfortable with the behind-the-curve digital dinosaur is actually Forrester's label for this. I don't like it because that starts to feel like a value judgment. I think a lot of organizations have very real constraints in their budget, in their staffing, in the amount of time they have, in their vision, in their digital literacy, and everything else. They shouldn't be sort of called dinosaurs. It doesn't make you a dinosaur. It means you're lagging behind the curve. You have some work to do. When you see, and I've seen museums in both of these sort of the blue and the purple sectors, either they've sunk a lot of money into their IT department with no thought of what they're going to do with audience engagement. And they end up with really powerful technology that doesn't do anything, right? Maybe that's more common in the US than in Europe, but I've certainly seen it. The opposite is you chase that user experience. You're constantly raising money and spending money and building new apps and audio guides and all other kinds of things, but you don't store it anywhere and you don't have it backed up and there isn't really an infrastructure in place to keep it going over time. That's another mistake. You put those two together, you marry those two, and you become digital master, right? So I don't consider myself a digital master. I'm striving toward that, striving to build that at MIA. We'll get there, I believe, eventually. I think if anything, we're actually lagging behind a little bit on the operations side. I think we've pushed a little too far on the user side. Finding the balance is what's really important. Number 2, leadership. Great leadership inspires and empowers by making vision and strategy clear and attaching those to tactics. So this sounds very simple, but it's actually difficult for a lot of organizations to achieve this. The number 1 complaint that I hear from digital staff across the sector is that senior management really doesn't share strategy and vision with digital. That's the biggest complaint I hear from digital, right? It's kind of amazing and kind of sad if you think about it. Leaders, I consider myself a leader, my most important responsibility is to make sure the vision and the strategy are clear. I don't know how to do the tactics. I can't even unjam the printer, right? Someone else has to do that. But leadership has an optimal level. So this inverted U shape is common in sort of biology, right? It's sort of a stimulant. But the idea is if your executive leadership is completely ignoring digital won't be successful. when they get to the point where they're learning and prioritizing and empowering and really in there with the team, you'll see great success. But as soon as they start hovering, controlling, coming to every meeting, pushing digital around, you'll just get pushed back and you'll have a less successful team again, right? There's an optimal level of involvement, and that involvement needs to be at the vision and strategy level. My friend and colleague, Tiana Tasic, made this quote in a paper that she wrote, which I think is really interesting. She believes that you cannot succeed with digital unless you become a networked organization. What does that mean? Well, here's a traditional HR document, right? So at MIA, we've worked really hard to be more of a networked organization and less vertical and less siloed. And yet, this is what's posted in terms of our organizational chart. I have a question for you. How is that different than this? So there's a museum and the Secretary of Defense. And something doesn't seem right there to me. You know, it reminds me of this old pyramid structure, you know, where there's the power is concentrated at the top, and then others sort of trickle down. And then I look and I say, well, is that... So there's a director, and I see that there's some peasants there. You know, I've come to realize that our organizational structure is over 1,000 years old. And I think it's maybe time to change. And that's what Tiana was talking about. The future, and you probably heard about some of the terms here, like holacracy and other kinds of things, but the concept is small world networks. And it's kind of easy, really, to break it down into saying there are two elements, clusters and path length. Clusters, small groups of people working together with a shared end goal, okay? Path length, how far away are those groups from each other and from sort of the leadership of the organization? So this is a made-up diagram, but I'm actually kind of worried about, pointer's not working, kind of worried about these folks up here, right? They have no path. I don't know what that is. Maybe that's the groundskeeping crew. I don't know, maybe they don't need to know the strategy too much, but here's a sort of simplified museum example. And here again, we're looking at people. People are the nodes. People are the connections. People are often on more than one team. And when you're planning that exhibition, people are taking pictures. I gotta get out of the way. So I could actually put names on here too of folks that work in our museum. Again, the closer, so if media production is only 2 jumps away from exhibition plan, it's pretty good. But if they get pushed 3 or 4 jumps away, they're gonna make stuff that's irrelevant to the exhibition, right? They're not close enough to the strategy. Number 4, find those people in your organization who are change agents, people who are good at driving change. They have 3 characteristics, change agents. Number 1, they're central to the informal network, so back to that small world network again. They're actually very important. It doesn't mean they're at the top of the organization. They're central to the informal network. They're the folks that people trust and work with. They're really good at bridging. So you'll see them having lunch with one group of people one day and another group of people another day, and those groups never have lunch together, right? Change agents can talk to a lot of different folks in the organization. And then finally, they actually have close relationships with people who are sitting on the fence. I don't know about this digital thing. It worries me. I'm not jumping on board. I need to be convinced. Let's look at it a sort of different way. In most organizations, right, we have Lucas. Lucas is powerful, important. He's the king. And Josh is a peasant, right? So this organization wants to implement a big change, a digital transformation. Who do they put in charge? Lucas, right? Lucas has all the power. Lucas can drive change. Lucas will take care of it. We love Lucas, right? We're the board of trustees. Lucas is our man, right? And then, of course, all the staff rebel against Lucas, and the project gets stuck, and no one knows what's wrong because they didn't really do their research and find out that Josh is actually way more important than Lucas in the informal network. People come to Josh with their issues, with their problems. People trust Josh. Josh gets stuff done. Josh is valuable and important. Lucas still matters, right? He needs to hire more Joshes is what he really needs to do. But let Josh drive the transformation. Find these people in your organization, and it will work. It will work quickly. It will work effectively. Number 5 is really about, I'm tired. It's about professionalization. It's about adopting practices, take the chaos, corral it into effective business process. Our sector has accepted mediocre business practices for decades. It stuns me. I will also admit this, in the last 4 years, I've hired 12 people. 1 with a museum background. 11 with industry background. Because I need professional practices. I can't hire from the museum sector for technology because the people in the museum sector who are applying for the job lack the knowledge necessary to be successful. It's a little bit sad. And I think as these folks work for me, and a lot of them are young, they'll learn about this kind of stuff and they'll go on and they'll get hired in other organizations and they'll have that combination. But those folks really aren't out there right now. Because we haven't professionalized, we need to do this. Number 6, digital literacy for leadership. And in the fine print, leadership literacy for digital. It's kind of a circle, right? If you're a leader in an organization, bring your digital folks in and talk to them about the things you really do know. Strategy, vision, management, leadership, decision making. You're good at that. Some of your digital folks don't have experience doing that. And if you're a digital person, go to your leadership and tell them about digital. Teach them about digital. It's kind of important not to make sure you're not judging them, but share what you know in a sort of loop in a way. What is digital literacy? It's really 3 things. It's kind of what you know, how critically you can think about it, and then what's called contemporary skills, which is a sort of vague category that breaks down to you know how to text, right? So you kind of can use technology in some way. The goal in the organization is not to have your executive director be a nerd, right? The goal isn't to make sure that your executive director can program the website. It's not the goal. Digital literacy is about learning enough so that you can make business-critical decisions intelligently, generally working with your team, and keep learning. I threw up Alice Chen's 9 C's of digital literacy here. I do not have time to go over them. I recommend that you dig into it a little bit. It's a little cutesy because everything has to start with a C. Feels marketing a little bit. But what she has to say about digital literacy is really smart. If we go back to that diagram, right, if you start with just remember some facts and start to understand and explain what's going on as an executive director, you're really already in the pool. That's great. That's that learning slope of the previous inverted U diagram. Your staff will really begin to trust you when they see that that's the approach that you're taking. Okay, who feels like this when people talk to them about digital? Anybody? No one, okay, good. Someone will admit it. Thank you. Thank you for being honest. So part of being a great digital leader, in my opinion, is a sense of empathy. When I'm talking to an executive director or to the board, and I see this, well, you don't really see this, right? You feel this. You can sort of see someone's eyes start to spin around in circles. I know I have to stop talking about technology and go to confidence and really start talking about confidence to build up a leader's confidence. Because confident leaders are curious learners, right? Whereas insecure leaders are nervous controllers. All of us have been guilty of this at one point in our careers or another, maybe even currently. Insecure leaders are afraid of being found out as fools. So they hire sheep. How dare you question my judgment? I'll fire you tomorrow, right? Maybe less common in the museum sector. I think it's maybe more common to have some arrogant leaders. Sorry. Maybe it's only in America, never in Sweden. Right? Arrogant leaders are kind of, if you challenge them, they just kind of grin at you. They ignore everything you say because they already know, right? It's their idea is the best already. They hire people they have fun with because it doesn't really matter if they do anything. I'm the leader. I take care of it all. And guess what? Both types of leaders already know everything, right? When there'll come a day when Minneapolis Institute of Art gets sick of me. I need to look for a new job. I'm avoiding working at places where the leaders know everything, right? I see that as a major red flag. What is a confident leader? Confident leader loves diversity in all of its forms. Diverse ideas, diverse staff, diverse values. They welcome a challenge because they know that in the course of debate, we'll find the best answer. We need some dynamic tension. We need some people who disagree with each other. That's where creativity comes in an organization. The real mark of a confident leader is you go to that leader with a question, and the leader says, I don't know, but let's go figure it out together. That's who you want to work for. And if you are a leader, that's who you want to be, because people will love working for you. People. You knew I'd come back to people. Can't help it. I'm a psychologist at heart. People matter. You got to hire the right people. It's very important to find the right people and bring them on board. Now, this book, which is a typical American business book in that you can probably skip the last 4 chapters because it just repeats what the first 4 chapters said. There's a magazine article that they made into a book to make money, right? At the end of every chapter, Mr. Murphy says you should hire his company because they can do it better than you. So don't read the last 4 paragraphs of every chapter. So I've now narrowed it down for you. But in between, there's this terrific method for really thinking about who you are as an organization, what are your real values, and what kind of attitudes do you need in your staff, and how do you ask questions in an interview to find out attitude. Early in my career as a manager, I made this mistake. Maybe some of you have made the same mistake. I hired people with really impressive resumes. They had a long list of skills. They seemed like, wow, they can do everything. I got to get this guy on board. And they came in and they were a jerk, right? Nobody liked them. They couldn't work with anyone. They didn't fit. They didn't have the right attitude. They didn't have the right character. And I'm a little ashamed to admit that because of my background in psychology. You'd think I could figure this out. But I have, I think, eventually. And I wish, I should make a video of this someday. You should hear my staff talk about being interviewed by me for the job, right? They'll say things like, God, I confess things to him that I haven't told anybody else. I'm horribly embarrassed. He's never going to hire me. That was unlike any interview I've ever. He didn't ask me a single question about PHP. But it's fun, and I really, and I wouldn't say, and encourage you, use a formula like you have in the book here, because you don't want to make this just a casual conversation, because then all your biases will be built into it. It's really hard to fight against if you don't have a method, and you get a methodology from the book. So, hire a character. You can always train PHP. You can't train empathy. Sorry. It's just not true. Once you have great people, and you give them an inspiring vision, they'll know what to focus on, and they will naturally build better processes if you let them work together. There you go. 10 seconds, your entire strategy for making this work. Okay? Anytime we try to make change, there will be resistance. It's part of our nature. Human beings prefer the known to the new, the familiar to the unfamiliar, right? What do they say? The devil you know to the devil in the dark. People want things to remain the same. Even if they say otherwise, it's uncomfortable to change. There's that famous old joke, right? The only person in the world who appreciates change is a baby with a filthy diaper. But even then, when you lay the infant down and you start to open it up, what does the baby do? Cries, right? So change is hard. Change is difficult. I used to coach track and field, and in track and field, there's this event called the hurdles, right? Well, what are you going to do? If hurdles are coming your way and you know that, you jump, right? I mean, I guess you can run right through them. You're going to end up badly bruised and in last place. You don't want to do that. So the hurdles are coming. Here's a few of them. The mindset of the folks in the organization, the commitment of your senior management, how you make decisions in an organization, all of these things will be hurdles that you'll have to face as you drive any kind of change, whether it's digital transformation or any other big structural change in an organization. Let's talk about them a little bit. Mindset, psychological research, a lot of it recent. There's a couple of books out about this. We've all known these kind of people, right? They're super talented, but you can't ever dare question them. And if they have a failure, they're crushed by it, right? Just devastated and depressed for days. But we've also known these kind of people. Endlessly optimistic, hardworking. They fail and they say, God, what did I do wrong? How can I fix it? Let me try again, right? They reach out to other people. They're constantly learning. They're curious. They look forward to things going wrong because in that moment, they can really be challenged, and they gather a team and they solve problems and they fix things. If you hire a lot of these folks with a growth mindset, you're going to be happy. You're going to be really, really happy, right? And if you're seeking a job, find a leader with a growth mindset. People who believe in hard work. These are people who believe that when you put effort into something, you will succeed, right? Again, you go back to babies, you watch a baby learning how to walk. What kind of mindset do they have? They've got a growth mindset. How many times they fall down, right? Every time. Right? They just keep trying. They keep getting up and keep getting up and keep getting up. That's who you need to be. By the way, you can learn it. You can learn it. If you are stuck in a fixed mindset, it's okay. Don't panic. You don't need to get up and walk out of the room. You can learn a growth mindset just simply by practicing. A couple of good self-help books out there. Go find one, put a plain cover on it so no one knows and go for it. They'll think it's pornography, but that's okay. Less embarrassing. Here's another issue, resistance, right? Because the staff is excited. Like, yeah, what Douglas said. Let's have a networked organization and let's distribute authority. Let's have teams. Let's have short path length. Let's have strategy. Do that. And then senior management says, like, wait a minute. Not what Douglas said. Chaos, lack of control, problems. I don't know what will happen. And maybe they're right if you unleash the hounds without training them. You end up with, a mess. There is a way to go about this, though, and it's something that I've done with my staff that I think has been really effective. I'm back to a 2x2 matrix. Sorry, you think I went to business school, right? Everything in the world fits in a 2x2 matrix if you have an MBA. In decision-making, what I want to do is coach and mentor my staff to make decisions without me. I'm in Sweden, okay? They need to make decisions. Last week I was in Ohio. They need to make decisions without me. How do they do that? And I'm proud to say some of them pin this up on their bulletin boards, right? There are really two elements. One, what's our strategy? What's important? And how hard is it? And let me fill this in just a little bit. If it's very important and not hard, why isn't it done already? Okay? This one is easy. If you know it's highly important to the strategy and easy to do, do it. But for goodness sake, if it's not strategically important but easy to do, will you please stop? Right? So when you hear your staff at lunch say, today, I deleted 500 emails from my inbox. Check, successful day. You're like, God, this is not important, right? This is simply not important. The cool blue is a challenge for all of us, right? These are very important but very difficult projects, and the issue there is we just can't do them all at once. That's where you really need strong communication with your leadership to decide in what order are we going to go after these? What kind of partners can we find? Is there extra funding? Can I bring in some temporary help, excuse me, to get that done? The really scary ones are the red flags. Very hard and not important, right? HR comes to one of my developers and says, do you think you could custom write a performance review software? Because the current one that we have isn't very good and everyone hates it. Well, how many people here love performance review software, right? We could have spent 6 months building a performance review software that would be equally hated, right? It's just simply not important. It doesn't drive audience engagement. It doesn't make the museum a better place. It doesn't give us great content. It's just a waste of time. Don't ever do those. How do I use this? So I let my staff make decisions as distributed authority. I hardly make decisions at all anymore. But if they make a decision I disagree with it, we sit down, this piece of paper sits on the table between us, and we talk it through. What happened? Why were you working on that red flag project for the past week? What made you decide that was not a red flag project? And I can coach them into seeing their decision-making, improving their decision-making, get better at it. This is how you distribute that without losing control. I can't finish this responsibly without admitting that any kind of change, including digital transformation, can lead to real conflict, right? Shouting and yelling and panic and all kinds of psychological problems, right? Now, conflict resolution is the responsibility of a leader. That's actually what you're paid for, right? Not programming the website. You're actually paid to deal with your staff. You'll have to invite me back next year for an entirely session about conflict resolution because it's a very important topic. Here's just a few guidelines. There's a ton of information out there about conflict resolution. Trust me, we're museums, right? If there's conflict, it's tough, but we got to get in there and work on it. Just remember, no one's life savings are going to be destroyed. No babies will be injured. No animals are tested, right? It's just conflict in our organizations. We can work with it, and we can get in there as leaders and help people make better decisions, work better together, whether it's digital or not. Now, I want to leave you with this thought, and it's about messiness. This is the studio of Francis Bacon, arguably England's greatest portrait painter. Well, argued by me, but whatever. I love Francis Bacon. But oh my goodness, right? What would his mother say? But change is messy. Organizational change is really messy because organizations are made up of people. People are messy. People are emotional. People are irrational. People had a difficult commute. People had a fight with their spouse last night. You don't know any of this kind of thing, and dealing with people is hard and difficult. But as a leader, as you lead digital transformation, from the chaos and the mess of what is your organization, you can still craft a masterpiece. Thank you for your time this morning. Some questions?
Thank you, Douglas Hegley, very much for this very inspiring speech. Can you, before you're leaving this stage, just give us one advice to take with us when we are leaving here today to motivate us in our own digital progress and, as you said, go on delivering wonder?
So that's the key.
That's the key.
That's the key, right? And if you're considering a digital project, I hope one of the first questions you ask yourself and the person who's recommending the project is, will it deliver wonder? And to whom? Who's your audience? One of our mistakes as an industry is we say, okay, we're gonna have this exhibition. Who's the audience? Everybody, right? That'll be easy. That's what commercial companies do when they make a product. They're like, everybody is our customer. That's why they advertise and market to everybody. And come on, right? To be realistic, you define your audience, you define who you're trying to reach with that exhibition. Then you think about how can we deliver that experience of awe or wonder, and do we need digital for that? Because you might not. Really, digital is not an answer. Digital is a tool, okay? As is any other kind of interpretive, any kind of installation design, the way that people sort of logistically get to your organization and get through the door, digital is just one of those tools. And if you see a path where digital is going to deliver that experience of awe and wonder, then by all means, go for it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To show our appreciation to have you here tonight, today, we have made a donation to the International Heritage Emergency Fund.
Wow.
You get a diploma for that.
Thank you. Terrific.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Applause.